But we've got loads of people joining. We've got 43 at the moment. So welcome everybody. Come in. Welcome to Equal Parenting Week. Thank you so much for being here. I think some people are actually here as groups as well, doing watch parties with their employers. So that's fantastic. We're just sorting out the video in the background. But as we're doing that, I'll talk a little bit about Equal Parenting Week. It's been incredible so far. This is the inaugural Equal Parenting Week, which is all about how we de-gender caring responsibilities, how we normalize male caring, how we support dads to be equal parents, how we support mums to thrive at work and at home. And it's been incredible. We've done so many events so far. We had a really big launch event at Deloitte on Monday. Jane was there, Michael was there, a few people in the attendance list I can see were there too. It was a fantastic event. We had politicians, business leaders, parents, couples on stage sharing how they share the care and talking about equitable relationships. And that was really, really good. We've got webinars going on all throughout the week. We've been supported to do a billboard campaign. So if you are on the motorway at a service station, you may see Equal Parenting Week billboards everywhere. So shout out to Talon for that. They've supported us massively. And on Saturday, we have Push for Paternity Leave, which is the nationwide walk across Manchester, Leeds, Nottingham and London, where we are taking to the streets to march for better paternity leave. Everyone is welcome, so bring your family, bring a pram, bring a nan, bring a dog. Bring anyone that you can find that will come with you into London, Leeds, Manchester or Nottingham on Saturday from 12 till 2. And really, there are a couple of things that we want to make sure are threads through this week. The first is that equal parenting conversation and equal parenting week has to be for everybody. It's not just for married, partnered couples. It's for same-sex couple families. It's for co-parenting families. It's for families with children with additional needs. And it's for parents with chronic health conditions. This conversation has to be inclusive. It has to be for everybody. And we've worked really hard to try to reflect that in the activity and the messaging throughout the week. And the second thing is that equal parenting is not always a 50-50 utopia. It's not us skipping hand in hand through the meadows with the rainbows and unicorns. It's not always that. It is sometimes, but often it is messy. But what equal parenting is the intention from both parents to come to the table and make decisions that help both parents thrive at work and at home in a way that works uniquely for that family. And Equal Parenting Week is about removing the barriers to enable families to do that and supporting the conversations in our homes so we can have those equitable relationships. We know it's so important. It's so important to the motherhood penalty, the fact that mothers do around 60% more unpaid care, domestic duties, childcare. As a result, we'll lose around £65,000 in the first 5 years after becoming a mother. We know that we have a gender pay gap in the UK higher than the European average. Around 80% or over 80% of that is attributed to the motherhood penalty. We need to fix this for working mums, but also for working dads, because it is true that dads will on average increase their salary after becoming a father, but at what cost? Often that cost is relationships, it is connection, it is time spent with the people that are most valuable to that dad, and that is their partner and their children. And that can have devastating impacts to mental well-being. We know from University of Swansea research that 2 to 3 babies in the UK will lose their father to suicide every single week. So this is really, really important. It's important for the longevity of relationships. It's important for the future birth rate, which is at an all-time low in the UK. Equal Parenting Week is not a nice to have. This conversation is absolutely critical to all of us and also to the future generations as well. So I'm hoping with that filler, we're ready for the video. And here we go. Let's see if it works. Fantastic. We got there. Brilliant. Thank you, Lauren. So, everyone in the chat, drop a comment. Where are you dialing in from? Your name, where do you work? And any questions you have, anything you have around flexible working. We have some brilliant panelists. We have Jane Van Zel, who is the CEO of Working Families, the incredible charity I am proud to be an ambassador of. And Jane is going to talk about return to office mandates, trends we are seeing in regards to employers and flexible working, and advice for what parents can do. We have Richard Odufisan, who is inclusion lead at Balfour Beatty. I'm really, really happy to have Richard here because Richard is from an organization that has many staff that work on site. Balfour Beatty is in the construction industry. And so it's just incredible to hear from someone in that industry around flexible working, because that is often a question or maybe a barrier, a perceived barrier around flexibility. So we're going to talk around the employer side from Richard. And then we have a couple. We have Michael and Emily with us, who are going to speak about equity in relationships, how flexible working helps them to share the care. And they've got some really interesting insights. I loved hearing lived experience. So thank you so much, Michael and Emily. So let's kick it off. We know we are in a time now where it's been an interesting few years. 2020 was horrible for so many reasons. But one good thing was that we all realized, actually, for the most part, many of us can do some of our jobs from home. And that was a game changer. It has been a game changer. It's completely revolutionized the support that some working parents can get. But at the same time, there is a pushback for us to get back in the office 5 days a week from some employers. We know dads are less likely to ask for flexible working. And when they do, they're less likely to have those flexible working requests approved. But we also know that a lack of flexible working is one of the main reasons that pushes mothers out of the labour market. So we really need to think about equity in flexible working, and how we support all working parents to be able to work in a way that actually supports them to be the best parents they can be, while also thriving in their careers. So, questions in the chat. Let's get going. And I'd like to welcome Jane to the stage. Hi, Jane. Lovely to have you here. You have a presentation for us. So
I do.
What I thought I'd do, I'll ask you to present your presentation first, and then we'll kind of go over some questions.
Super. Here we go. Hopefully I can get the tech right. I'm not promising anything though. No, I'm just I'm now showing you my calendar. So that's clearly wrong.
You're a CEO. No wonder you're so busy, Jane. You should put some gaps in there for downtime.
I should put some gaps in there, but it's a very busy week this week. So let me try that one more time. I'm so sorry, guys.
I love it when that happens.
Let's try this now.
At least it was your calendar and not anything more incriminating. So, calendar's fine.
So share, where is this presentation? Application window, share. How is that?
Yay, we can see it. We can see your notes as well. So
as a presentation.
Slideshow. We can see your notes. So what did you do before? I think you clicked on that, didn't you? There we go. We're in.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks so much for this. So Working Families, we're a charity, and as you all know, Elliot is one of our ambassadors, and we are all about removing the barriers that parents, but that people with caring responsibilities, so not just parents, face in the workplace. And I'm going to be talking through what happens when flexible working is denied. So, looking at the current landscape, I want to look at a very simple framing. Flexible working is no longer a niche benefit or something people ask for as a favour. For working parents, it's become a core condition that determines whether they can stay in work and progress at all. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to do 4 things: set out what the current landscape looks like, explain what we are seeing with return to the office mandates, clarify what working parents are actually entitled to in law, and finish with some practical advice for parents who are struggling to access flexibility. So the first thing that I really want to emphasize is that flexible working is now embedded in the UK labour market. And when we talk about flexibility post 2020, It's important to be clear that we do not mean just working from home. Flexible working is about when, where, and how work is done. Excuse me. Things like start and finish times, compressed hours, term time working, job shares, and hybrid patterns. For many roles, hybrid working has become the default expectation. That's some of the time in the office, some of the time at home. And for parents, it's often what makes work workable alongside childcare and or caring responsibilities. But access to flexible working is still very uneven. What we hear consistently from parents is that flexibility depends heavily on your role, your manager, your workplace culture, rather than the business necessity. So while demand for flexible working keeps rising, supply hasn't kept up, and the gap is where many of the current tensions are showing up. Excuse me, I love this picture. It's all about presenteeism, all of those empty desks. One of the biggest pressure points right now is the rise in return to office mandates. These show up in different ways: fixed office days, minimum attendance requirements, or a rolling back of informal flexibility that people relied on post-pandemic. What the evidence shows very clearly is that these mandates are being met with growing resistance, particularly from parents. Large numbers of workers say they would look for a new job or leave altogether if they were required to be in the office full-time. For parents, the issue isn't motivational commitment, it's logistics. Childcare is time-bound. Commuting removes the buffer that many parents rely on to manage drop-offs, pickups, illness, and caring responsibilities. From an employer perspective, this creates a real risk, losing experienced staff, disproportionately affecting women and carers, and opening up potential discrimination concerns if rigid policies impact some groups more than others. And it's important to understand why this lands so much harder on working parents. Childcare availability and opening hours often simply don't align with traditional commuting parents. Many families operate on an extremely finely balanced routine. Adding even 1 or 2 extra office days can tip that balance, forcing parents to reduce hours, stall progression, or leave work altogether. And the impact can still be gendered. Women are more likely to carry the day-to-day coordination of childcare, so inflexible working patterns risks widening gender gaps in pay and progression, and of course risks the relationships between parents of whatever shape, size, and form. The key point here is that flexibility isn't a perk for parents, it's the infrastructure that allows them to work at all. So in terms of the legal position, in the UK, employees now have a strengthened right to request flexible working, but not an automatic right to receive it. From April 2024, employees could make a flexible working request from day one of employment, and they can make up to 2 statutory requests in any 12-month period. Employers must consult with the employee before refusing a request, and they must respond, including any appeal, within 2 months, unless a longer period is agreed. Employers can still refuse requests, but only for specific business reasons set out in law, and the process must be reasonable. So, what's our advice for parents struggling to access flexibility? How you approach it makes a real difference. Number 1, get advice early. It's helpful to frame your requests around outcomes rather than convenience. For example, how will the work be covered? How will handovers work? How will performance be maintained? Our free legal advice line has a 90% success rate at helping people keep the jobs that they have and getting most, if not all, of the flexibility they need. And that's because it's a human-to-human conversation that we encourage you to have. Offering options to your line manager, to your boss, can help enormously. Suggesting a trial period, a review point, or alternative patterns if the original request can't be accommodated. And if a request is refused, parents should ask for the business reason and request a discussion about alternatives. consultation is a legal requirement. You can, of course, also make a formal statutory request in writing. And finally, if things start to feel contentious, or if your issue overlaps with pregnancy, disability, or discrimination, get advice from us at Working Families, because it can prevent problems escalating. And to close, there are 3 simple messages. Flexible working keeps parents in work and helps employers retain skilled, experienced staff. Rigid approaches often backfire, increasing turnover, reducing trust, undermining inclusion. And the best outcomes, and we can't emphasize this enough, come from practical problem solving, good job design, confident managers who hopefully have been trained in how to line manage flexible teams, a culture that treats flexibility as a norm rather than exceptional. And the bit that I've forgotten to say, but is highlighted, is senior leadership real modeling, not role modeling, but real modeling. What does it actually look like? And for parents and carers, we've got our free legal advice line. Do have a look at the hundreds of articles on our website, which will go through your rights and also your obligations as far as your employer is concerned. And then, of course, for employers, if there are any employers out there, we have employer membership for ongoing support and a family-friendly workplace certification. And that's it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jane. Yeah, really good summary there. And I think a lot of things that you said like will resonate deeply with everyone in attendance. We have a couple of questions actually. I was going to come to the questions at the end, but I think they're relevant for you now. So well, I'll ask you a couple if that's okay now. So someone said in the Q&A, I have put in a request for flexible working, and I have a meeting next week with my manager, who is very supportive, and HR, who isn't. In the flexible working policy, it states compressed hours aren't generally approved. Any advice as to how I influence my workplace to approve me working Monday to Thursday with longer hours and then having Friday off?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is one of those really tricky questions. If within the culture of an organization, there is a preference for a different kind of flexible working, then it really can be very difficult, because there's no right in law for you to have compressed working. It's great that your line manager is supportive. So our advice would always be have that person-to-person conversation, have that conversation about, because for your employer and obviously for your boss, the most important thing is, what are you delivering? What are the outcomes of the role? But yeah, flexible working can be a really tricky one, both for employers and employees. For some employees, it can be actually you're working even more than a 5-day week, 5 days compressed. But yeah, really, really challenging situation. And have a look at our website to see if there's any more advice there.
Thank you. And another question says, Jane, last year our organization moved from 50-50 hybrid to 60-40 in the office, so 3 days a week. We've heard from a lot of parents and carers in our network about the impact this has had on them. Do you have any guidance templates as to how we can vocalize this in an appropriate manner to our CEO and our people HR leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have any kind of formal way of doing that. But one of the things that we think is so important is all of these family networks need to have a senior sponsor within the family network. And the more that you can use that senior sponsor and explain the real challenges, but also from the business's perspective, explain how you can get around any issues with delivering the outcomes that are part of your role. Talk about, there may very well be options within your organization already where people are working in a slightly different way. Have that conversation with them, show how it's working. But we would always start from that place of having those conversations. And I guess for us, the conversation would be about, are there also any savings for the employer? For example, travel costs, look at that kind of thing. But in terms of moving back, it can be really challenging. Do have a look at the website, but I would really advise that senior sponsor.
Mm.
Talk to the senior
Yeah,
sponsor.
yeah, I think that's right. And ages ago now, I was working at the Department of Transport in the civil service and sharing the families network. And one of the things that we did, which was it was free, but it was really impactful, was we just got a kind of a booklet. We made a booklet of different stories of different employees and how they worked. And so we might have we had a grandma actually, and this is back in 2017, who worked from the soft play on a Friday because caring for her grandma for her granddaughter for a couple of hours, and she had the laptop, and she spoke about what she was doing then, and that was unheard of before COVID. We had dads who worked compressed hours, and we put that kind of database together. And so when people came to us and said, "Okay, I want to work flexibly. How do we do it here? Can you give us some examples?" We can just show them that booklet, and they went off and used that in their conversations with their line manager. So I think that storytelling and examples across the organisation is really, really important, really key. Loads more questions coming, but we're going to save them for the end. So thank you, Jane. We're going to invite you back in for the Q&A. Everyone listening, please do continue to put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get through as many as we can towards the end. So thank you, Jane. Right, now I would like to introduce Richard to the stage. So Richard is Inclusion Lead at Balfour Beatty. Incredible to have you here, Richard. So let's get straight into it. Talk to us about the context of Balfour Beatty, with it being a male-dominated industry and employer, and obviously largely on-site. How does it impact what you can offer around flexible working?
Amazing. Thanks again, Elliot, for having me. I think this is a really important conversation, and I'm glad we can bring this lens to it as well as hearing from all the amazing people on the panel. So, hi everyone. Yeah, my name's Richard. I work for Balfour Beatty, and for anyone who doesn't know or you've heard of Balfour Beatty but you're not sure what we do, basically we work across infrastructure, construction, and civil engineering, which are three very male-dominated and largely on-site industries. I think a good context setting for it is that the industries we're working in historically haven't been built around flexibility. So it's not as simple as just, yeah, bring it in and it works. Um, Typically, what we're looking at is long hours, site presence, and even like a culture of just getting on with things have been embedded for a long time. And what those don't do is they don't make flexibility impossible, but it does mean that when we're having these conversations, it has to be a lot more deliberate. Um, Secondly, I think it's really important that when we talk about having a male-dominated workforce, that doesn't necessarily mean that the workforce doesn't have caring responsibilities or personal commitments or other reasons why they might want flexibility. So one of the big shifts we want to make, particularly as an industry, we care a lot about safety, and that's both physical and mental and well-being and the whole thing. So we want to normalize these conversations for everyone as part of the conversations around safety, not just for women who might be returning from maternity leave and who may actually, as the report that you released this month said, we'll be doing more of the caring responsibilities. But what we don't want is for it to just seem like it's for them. But we want to make it for everyone, something that people who have raised it, haven't raised it, the more we treat it as a standard, a default, something that any employee can raise, the more useful it becomes as a tool, not just for retention, because I think as Jane was saying, people are looking at moving on, but for well-being as well. Um, the third thing I want to do is this context setting piece is be honest, right? We have got an on-site reality. The work is where it is, so we can't just import standard office-based flexible working approaches and expect it to land well on site. We have to think quite differently about what that flexibility actually means when the location is fixed. So that's for us, yeah, the context that we're working within
Hmm.
and the challenge we have to try and face as we're going through it.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with all of those, especially the one around normalizing flexibility for everybody. My first flexible working arrangement was because I used to rehearse with my band on a Wednesday. So I worked compressed hours. So on a Wednesday, I could have off to go and play my bass guitar. But that was good for, I wasn't a parent at the time, but it was good for the working parents because they
Exactly.
then didn't have to be the outlier asking for flexibility because there was everyone doing it for a variety of different reasons. So talk to us about what kind of flexible working arrangements do you offer then for, let's talk about firstly the office employees. What do you do for the office employees?
Okay. So I think one of the things that I like about how we do it internally is we don't call it flexible working, we call it smart working, right? It's I think it's quite intentional, that use of language. Smart working isn't just about how do we make things easier or whatever. It's about thinking differently and thinking smartly about how we approach work altogether. Um, because I think when it comes to flexible working, particularly when you look at how it's represented in the media and almost as that contrast to presenteeism and in office full-time working mandates, office mandates, we want it to not just be seen as that, like ticking a box on a policy. This is about us thinking about when, where, how our employees work. So practically, what that means is we trust our people to make the best use of location, technology, and time to meet the needs of the business, the projects, the customers, the people. Um, and our line managers are asked to approach it with that positive outlook and the open mind, right? Every employee, if you're working in an office particularly, has that opportunity to have that conversation with their manager about what smart working looks like for them. It's not just about the policy that exists, it's about the conversations that we're having. How do we make it work? How do we balance it? I think as a standout as well, what I really wanted to share today was that it's directly connected to our values and our cultural framework, right? How we support our people is a key to the type of organization we're trying to be. We've not separated it as like a HR thing and us v them.
Yeah, important. So talk to us a bit about the on-site employees then, because I work with a lot of organizations and there is this barrier, I guess, perceived barrier, I think,
Mm.
where people feel like, oh, you have to be in person to do your job, whether that's
Mhm.
construction or retail or whatever it is. And I think sometimes we think so narrowly, that's the word, narrowly,
Narrowly,
about
yeah, really
flexible working
good.
that we see it just as hybrid working, whereas flexible working is broad. It's not just working from home. So what kind of things do you do then for your on-site employees to make sure they have some sort of flexibility?
And I think that point you raised is a really important one because so many people hear flexible working and automatically put it into that box of office or home or away. So it's all about location. And we have to be so honest. I think it would be really disingenuous to promise people whose job has to be on site that they can work from anywhere because it just doesn't work. It's not available for them. So what that means for us is when we think about flexibility and smart working for people whose job is on site, we have to look at how it shows up in other ways. So that's things like how the working week is structured, how their hours are arranged, what flexibility can we agree on at a site level. So I've got two examples, just also keep an eye on time. Um, Two examples, one of like a specific arrangement from a from a colleague in our rail team, and then a second one about a more general trial across a whole business unit. So for the rail one, we're building a station near Reading. It's just a small two-platform project, and we were talking with the site supervisor. Now, the project's in Reading. He lives in South Wales, so daily commuting wasn't really going to work for him. But what they offered and worked with for him as a practical solution was he stayed in a caravan during most of the week, and then he got to leave on at lunchtime on Wednesdays to get home for the night. He'd come back on the Thursday and then finish early on Friday so that he had enough time to balance time at home with his family, with his friends, that wasn't just completely away from home the entire length of the project. Um, it meant that he could balance his life in a way that worked for him. Not everyone is going to have that same approach or want that same approach. Some people are quite happy to be away from home for long periods of time. Other people aren't as much. So that's an example of like that personalized side of it. Then the more general side in our UK civils team, we are currently trialing a 9-day fortnight on some of our sites. So instead of adjusting where the people work, it's giving people a whole full day back in every 2-week period. So I think those examples demonstrate that you don't necessarily need broad policy change or to have to lead it from the top. You can do that personal element, or you can work as an overall team to think differently, not just about location, but particularly if location is fixed, time. How do you give people that time to still have their lives?
Yeah, I really like that. I think, that example of we're doing this as a team, this is a new way of working as a whole, but then obviously we all have individual needs. Some people like caravans, some people don't. So having that individual conversation and see what works for us individually, I think is good. And empowering line managers to be able to do that is so important. Okay, so just quickly, what impact have you seen in regards to employees on flexible working? Has there been a noticeable difference in regards to retention, recruitment, well-being, and stuff like that?
Absolutely. And I think the best example I can give is probably myself, right? I've been a recipient of it. Since joining Balfour's, I think I had only been in for 3 months when my second son was due. So in the run up to paternity leave, I went down to no days on site, so I was fully remote in the month leading up to when my son was born. Then I went on paternity leave. Then when I came back from paternity leave, I was only on site 2 days a week rather than three before ramping back up. And having that ability to have the short-term agreements meant I was still able to do my work, but still able to be as supportive as I could be in that period because with the balance for our lives, we had to make sure that our first son was getting to nursery on time, but making sure everyone was fed, the house is clean, etc. The one thing I really did want to stress as well is that it's not just been beneficial for parents. I think it is easy to see, we can do nursery runs, we can do pickups, drop-offs, all of that good fun. But people who don't have children have been able to go to doctor's appointments. They're able to spend time looking after their pets. They're able to bring their pets into the office. Is one of the benefits we have on our site. So that flexibility isn't just limited to where you're working, it's how does it help your life work with your work.
Yeah, definitely. I have a dog called Jesse, and he's very demanding. And without flexible working, he would not be happy. So I'm here for Jesse. So thank you so much, Richard. We're going to invite you back on for the Q&A at the end, but great to hear from you. Great to get the employer's perspective. So we've heard from Jane, who's given us the overall context. We've heard from Richard from the employer's perspective. And now we want to hear some lived real experience. At the launch on Monday, we have a couples panel, and the host said we're going to welcome some brave couples to the stage. And everyone laughed because the couples didn't know they were being brave. They were just sharing their experiences. But Michael and Emily, I think you're brave for being honest as a couple, coming on together and sharing your parenting journey, your flexible working journey, and your views on eco-parenting with us. So thank you so much for joining us. Let's get straight into it and start off with a little bit of context in regards to how kind of your views on eco-parenting and parenting roles have evolved from like before having kids to your first to where you are now with 2 children.
Sure. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, I suppose before we had, so I'm one of 3 and we're quite close together. So I had a very traditional family. My dad went out and worked, and in between me and my older brother, my mum stopped working because it logistically was just a nightmare. So I just assumed that when we had children, I'd want to do the same. I would want to be at home with them all the time. And then I had them, and I realised actually it's really hard. I definitely don't want to be full-time. Hats off to full-time mums or full-time parents because, it's not for me. So I quickly realised that actually I want to be part-time. I knew I didn't want to be full-time and miss out on too much. So I knew I wanted to go back part-time, and we just didn't really have the conversation. We just fell into the sort of gender sort of typical. Michael would go back full-time, Michael would stay full-time, and I'd go back part-time. Luckily, I'm a hairdresser, so it's predominantly female. Loads of people work part-time anyway. They're really flexible. So my job, I'm either there or I'm not. So it's really easy to sort of like do one or the other. So my company were amazing, and I just went back part-time quite easily.
Yeah, you increased your hours, didn't you? You did short
So
days.
Actually, post-COVID, I'd gone to flexible working hours. I'd condensed my 5-day week into 4 long days. So because of all the regulations and the social distancing, we had to open the salons longer. So I'd started to do long days and less days. So when it kind of went back to normal, they sort of said, does anyone want to continue working like this? And I was like, absolutely. I love my 3-day weekend. So I was already doing flexible working pre-kids. So I was already working a 4-day week, which was lovely because it meant you could have like a day for your jobs, and then it felt like you had a proper weekend. So I kind of got in that mindset anyway. So if I'd have gone back full time, that's what I'd continue to do. But there were 12-hour shifts, so actually with a family, that logistically is not that easy to do. So they were quite open to things anyway.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that conversation obviously is the financial element. That did dictate to a certain degree what we could do, which meant that I would sort of have to go back full time whether I wanted to or not, really.
And Michael, talk to me about your kind of your journey in this. I know that you had a moment where you realized actually more flexibility was going to be important for you. Talk to us about that kind of moment of realization where you thought actually we need to do things differently as a family.
Yeah, I can remember very, very clearly, and I think Emily can too. So we had a daughter, 2.5 years old. We had our second son. And it was about a week before I was due to go back after paternity leave. I had 4 weeks off, so my employer gave slightly enhanced, which was great. And we were at Willows Park, which is like a farm. And my daughter was having a meltdown. She kicked her wellies off. It was raining. I was holding her like this in my arms. And opposite me, Emily was stood with Sonny, our son, who was crying his eyes out, and I just looked across and caught a glimpse in her eyes, and her face just said it all. And it was a face of, how would I do this if you weren't here? And in that moment, I didn't have the answer, because I felt exactly the same. I was like, I don't know how you're going to do this either. And I think I just reflected on it, and a couple of days afterwards, it just dawned on me. I don't know why I hadn't thought before. It was just like, I need to ask for flexible working. And actually, like, I want to ask for flexible working for many reasons, which I'm sure we can come on to.
So what does that flexible working arrangement look like? How do you work now between you both?
So you do.
So I'm on maternity leave at the minute, so I'm currently off, but I do 3 days a week, and my company, I start a bit earlier and finish a bit late, finish a bit earlier. So I do 8 till 4:30, so proper days, but a little bit earlier. So Michael does drop-offs, and I can get home in time before the nursery shuts. So that's how we do it, basically.
Yeah, and my request was, I was working mostly remotely anyway. So it was a case of just to extend that slightly, pretty much do all remote work, but it was really around the hours. So what I requested was a compressed working week. So to do all my hours in 4 days, which would give me the Friday off, which meant that we had more time as a family. That effectively, in theory, Emily would have 1 day a week with both kids on her own, rather than the 2. So it was about getting that extra day really for the family.
Yeah, because our eldest is nursery, so she stayed in nursery because obviously I'm planning to return back to work next month. So our oldest is in nursery 3 days a week. So it meant that, it's not so bad now, they're a bit easier, but in the beginning stages, it meant that I had 1 day to fight for my life rather than 2.
So it sounds like you've got a nice arrangement at the moment where you both feel like you've got balance, which is fantastic, which is great. So talk to us about how this flexible working arrangement has helped you in your relationship to stay strong with each other, but also, Michael, to bond with your children. And how do you feel about having this opportunity now, and maybe how could it have been in regards to your relationship with your kids if you didn't have access to this level of flexibility?
Yeah, so I guess on that point, that was part of the the thinking. It wasn't just like, you know, that moment at Willows Park and like
I need help.
yeah, it wasn't just that. It was, you know, once I'd had the thought of I need to ask for flexible working, it was obvious, because actually, like, what I realized in that moment was, like, the last 2.5 years had gone by like that. You know, Ren suddenly was a toddler, and before we know it, she's going to be 5 and 10 and 15. You know, everyone says it. All the cliches are true, right? It's over so quickly. And I'd loved it. So why wasn't I going to spend as much time as possible with my kids? So from a selfish point of view, it was like, that's what I want to do. That's my number one job, right? You know, I was, again, I would say, I was lucky with my employer in that I'd been there a little while. You know, I've got the performance, and I think the respect to maybe like ask for this request. But also, it was a hill I was prepared to die on. Like, it felt that important to me, like, to be around with my kids selfishly so I can enjoy it, but also like from a developmental point of view, like, we know how crucial it is, like, to create those secure attachments and create those bonds, and also model like that there is what masculinity is, like, you know, what a good healthy relationship is. And I think that it's been essential for those bonds, like the fact that I'm here, you know, pretty much every day to do the bedtimes and to do the breakfast, and on that Friday and the weekends, like, they see dad doing exactly what, like, you know, I guess traditionally probably maybe mum would have done, like the cleaning up and the breakfast and the bits and pieces like that. So yeah, it's been crucial.
And I think, Michael, you're preaching right here, Michael. You're preaching. But I think that is why we're here. That is why we are here, to break down those gendered parenting norms, to say to dads, look, you can do things differently. It's possible. And we need to explore what masculinity looks like for us. You know, we can be very successful in all areas of life, and we can also be caregivers. Like, that is something that is within us, and it's actually not just a nice to have, it's really important to our well-being and our longevity and our health and our relationships. So I think hearing you articulate that like that is golden, and, you know, I think so important for everyone that's listening to hear you say that. Emily, from your perspective, how has, you know, the flexible working impacted, I guess, your motherhood journey, your relationship journey? What has it meant for you?
It's just made it more balanced. I mean, I think as obviously the primary caregiver, especially with being on mat leave, you carry a lot of the load, the mental load, like, so that sort of, it's a little bit more even in that. But it just means that I'm not exhausted, and also, like, it sounds awful, but I think especially when you're on mat leave, it could be a little bit resentful that someone else's world has carried on and you're just being mum, which is amazing, but it's the hardest job in the world. So I think I could quite easily, from the fact that, like, when he sort of says he's had a hard day, I'm thinking you've probably had a warm drink and you've had a chat with me and you haven't had a
nice lunch.
Yeah, you've had lunch, I haven't eaten, or you haven't got 1 or 2 children hanging off your neck. So I don't think anyone says, I feel like work is a bit of a day off. I've got a very social job, and I'm very lucky. So I know not everyone's job is as social and fun as mine. So that I've got like a bit of a warped reality with that. But yeah, it is definitely easier. So I think it's just made it, so it gives us a bit more time as well, because we've got 3 days as a family. We try to do something together as a family, and then we try to sort of like tag team. So we'll try to have a bit one-on-one time with the children, and then try to have a bit of, like, Mike can go paddle. I might pop into town on my own and not have to take like a buggy and 10 bags. So we just try to sort of like balance it out, so we get a little bit more time for everybody, a little bit more headspace. We're not got it perfect yet, because I haven't gone back to work, so I think the logistics will change again, and like it'll tip and the balance will be off a little bit for a while. But I think we're just conscious that we want it to work, and this has definitely made our lifestyle as a parent of, well, basically, two, like under 2, haven't we? Ren's not 3 yet. So yeah, it's just made it a little bit better for our sanity.
Yeah, I think something to mention as well earlier on that is that it helps, from my point of view as well, it helps compartmentalize in regards to, like, work have got a better version of me as well. Like, it's not just about I've got that extra day, which is great because it means that I've got more time for my family. It means actually that I'm more productive and I'm more focused where I am at work. And there is a level of flexibility in regards to if I need to do a meeting or something that needs to happen on a Friday, then I can do that. It obviously has to work both ways.
Yeah. Brilliantly said, Michael and Emily. I think it's so important to get that, the relationship part of this included in the conversation. We really want to think about the systemic changes that we can make from a government level, from the employer level. But ultimately, when it comes to equal parenting, whatever is around us, whatever policies and opportunities are around us, we need to embrace those individually and as a couple and have those conversations with each other. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing openly and honestly. And yeah, I think that was great. Thank you, Michael, Emily. Fantastic. So stay on here, and Richard, Jane, come back on the stage. We're going to go through some Q&A. We've got some great questions in there. We've got about 12 minutes, so let's try and get through as many as we can. Richard, there's one here from Caroline. She just wants more information, really, about the 9-day trial. Can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like, what that's looking like, and how you're making that happen?
Yeah, so again, the joy we have is that this individual sites might do it slightly differently, but the idea is instead of working 10 days, everyone is working a 9-day fortnight. So it's not quite traditional compressed hours where we're expecting everyone to increase their length. It's like a 4.5-day week, basically, where every other week you would have a day off. And I don't know whether I'd have to check with the specific site leads whether they're doing it a set day or whether people can elect which day they're doing. But yeah, the general idea is around that, just giving that 1 day back every 2 weeks, treating it as a 4.5-day week, but spread over a fortnight.
And did that come from like people saying they wanted it? Where was the motivation to try that?
Yeah, so our civils teams basically are almost entirely on site. So it is that space of recognizing that if you are away from home a lot, or if you are, even if it's just the stress of the work as well, because we take health and safety so seriously as part of our engagement surveys, we do wellbeing surveys. Part of it is just exploring what options there are and how we can do it in a way that doesn't impact their ability to do the role safely, not just for them, but also for the communities that we'll be in as we're doing that work. But in a way that means that we can get that balance right.
Yeah, and I think it's when we're having this conversation, I think it's important to just realize how life-saving this can be. We know in construction there's a high suicide rate, and the work is stressful.
Yes.
All of our work is stressful, but there's some work that is, I would say, is more stressful than others. And so having that bit more freedom, that bit more time to yourself, to go to the gym with your family, just to sleep, whatever it is, this is not a kind of nice to have. Actually, for some people, this can be life-saving interventions, which are so important.
Absolutely. I think, not wanting to labor it too much, but that point of recognizing that when we think about flexibility, it's not just this nice additional policy, right? We're thinking about health, we're thinking about well-being, we're thinking about the long-term impacts on our teams, on the people around us, friends, family, the lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry,
Go on,
I
Jane.
just wanted to come in very briefly. What you're doing at Bath Beatty sounds amazing, Richard. And it's one of the things that Working Families always tries to emphasize when we talk to employers and employees, is that everything needs to be designed around the job, because everybody wants to work because they want to get paid, and employers want to employ you so that they can get the jobs done. But it's that rights and obligations on both sides, and making sure that the job is designed in such a way that it can be done, one, in the hours that it's given, and safely. But that understanding that there are rights and obligations on both sides is so important, and that emphasis on actually this is a safety concern is also really important.
Absolutely.
And
Okay, so go on, sorry, Jane.
sorry, one last thing. There is something called the 4-Day Week Foundation, which people can find at 4dayweek.co.uk. And they're doing interesting things with different organizations looking at effectively reducing hours, but for the same pay. If you're workplace tells you you're now going to work 4 days, but you're not going to be, but you're going to be paid less, that is not a 4-day working week. That is not what Alpha Beta are doing.
Mm. Yeah, well said. Okay, so question from Richie. He says, what can you do if you find that flexible working seems to be approved more often for team leaders and senior management? Jane, I'll pose that to you. What do you think? What could Richie do in this scenario?
Yeah, this is something we hear a lot within working families. We know that this happens across organizations, and my phrase for it tends to be, it's the line manager lottery.
Yeah.
The Chartered Management Institute says that less than 20% of line managers have actually been trained in people management. They've just been promoted and promoted and promoted because they're good at what they do, but the organizations aren't giving them that advice about actually how do you manage people. We see it a lot. It happens. What I would always say that in terms of your own personal circumstances, have a look at our free legal advice line. I have to say I'm not a solicitor, so the information and advice I'm giving is about best practice within the workplace. It's not about legal advice. I'm not an employment solicitor. I can't give that. But we would always say start from the position of having that person-to-person conversation with your line manager. We know that there are people who like coming into the office and people who like seeing people in the office, and that can feel incredibly unfair. So have a look at and see what's possible around the edges. Are there things that you need to be in the office for? So do you have to be there for one-to-ones with your line manager? Do you have some deep thinking work where actually you need to be alone? Have a look at all of those kinds of things that are happening and then try to advocate for yourself. If your line manager is just saying a blanket no and other line managers are being much more reasonable, then maybe have a word with HR. They may be able to help. But unfortunately, there's no legislation that covers that person has a better relationship with their line manager and is allowed to work flexibly. And I can't, I'm afraid that sometimes life's unfair, which is a horrible thing to have to say.
Mm-hmm. I think this is why it's so important with interventions in organizations where they have good line management training to make sure there is consistency of implementation of any policy, that line managers are open to conversations. And it's not going to be perfect across any organization. We are human beings with our own isms and schisms and stuff like that, but I think that the companies that are investing in their line management capability and have good leadership, vocal leadership and good policies tend to do it better.
Yeah.
But I think with that as well, sometimes we have to make big decisions about where we work. And if we really feel like our organization is not going to support us, if we can, sometimes we have to make big decisions about actually, is this a place I want to be in the long term? Or do I have to make a big life decision and move somewhere that's going to be better for me in the long run?
And someone in the chat just also mentioned, if your workplace has a union, join your union, because they can advocate on behalf of people as well.
Yeah. All right. So I've got one more quick question, then we're going to get a take from all of our guests' kind of final words. But there has been quite a few comments and questions around parents who are carers for elderly parents, or family members who are unwell, or children with disabilities and additional needs. Is there any legislation or advice? Are people more protected if you are caring for someone who has a disability, or you have circumstances that are maybe outside of things that some other people are dealing with? Richard, do you know anything about that?
As far as I understand it, the wording of the rights to request flexible working don't differentiate between if you are requesting for caring for children or caring for adults. I don't think it specifically mentions why you have to request it. the key considerations are around impact to work and the ability to do the work as opposed to the reasoning for it. The protections you have as a carer mean that you can't be discriminated against because of your caring responsibilities. So regardless of what the reason for it is, you don't even technically need to disclose it to your employer at any point. It's your choice if you did want to disclose that. So, Jane, I assume you agree the same and understand it the same way.
Yeah, absolutely, Richard. However, it is worth mentioning in your request that if you're requesting flexible working, if it relates to your disabled child, the Equality Act protects people from disability discrimination in the workplace and in wider society. And this includes discrimination by association, such as treating a parent or carer less favourably, for instance, refusing their flexible working request because they have a disabled child. I am reading from the Working Families website. Very important to know that I'm not an employment solicitor. But I would say to everybody, have a look. There's a whole section on advice for parents and carers, and particularly advice for parents and carers of a child or an adult with a disability. So there is some legal recourse, but you really do need to understand your own personal circumstances and how that will work. So have a look at the website is what I would say.
Yeah, the Working Families, fantastic resource. And I think, yeah, if you are struggling, if you've joined this call and you're trying to think about how you negotiate a flexible working arrangement with your line manager, check out Working Families, call the advice line, check out the resources. They will really help you and empower you to be able to enter that conversation with all the information that you need. Okay, we're coming to an end. I want to get a take from all of you, your hopes for the future in regards to equal parenting and flexible working, okay? No pressure to say anything profound, but you can if you like. So what are your kind of key takeaways? What are your hopes for where we get to this time next year, Equal Parenting Week next year? What do you hope the narrative will be around equal parenting and flexible working? Michael and Emily, you can both contribute or you can say it at the same time, however you want to do it between you.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For me, I think in a year's time, it's that some of this is normalized, right? That what I think is coming across at the moment is there's a desire for flexible working, but there's lots of trepidation around it. So I think that, the movement in that direction, and for me, like the big one, like attached to it, is about the paternity leave, right? Like, it's just an obvious for all concerned employers in that bracket as well.
Well, I just hope everyone gets it becomes fair and people get the ability to do what we're doing, because it does definitely help with the stresses of family life. So I feel fortunate that we both got employees and in job roles that we can do that. So I just hope that, like I say, it becomes the norm that other people will have the same sort of chance.
Brilliant, thank you. Richard?
So I think for me, a big positive for this time next year will be closing that gap between perceptions and reality of shared work. For anyone who's not seen the report that came out from Parenting Out Loud, it was men's perceptions of how much of the childcare they're doing compared to the mother's perceptions of their perceptions of how much support they're getting. So I think it'd be great if we can close that gap. Not only because I think there is a genuine desire from a lot of dads to be more active and competent parents, but also because I think as partners, it's really important that we are able to provide the support that our partners would like to see.
Thank you, Richard. Jane?
I would love to see organisations being much better at supporting all parents. And in the 1970s, dads spent on average 15 minutes a day with their children. How fantastic that we live in a world where so many dads are fighting for paid paternity leave so that they can be the dads that they want to be. So I think this is just a fantastic point in time. And hopefully this time next year, we'll have some better paid paternity leave for everybody, including men who are self-employed.
100%. And on that note, join us on Saturday I'm going to say it again. Bring your family, your pram, and your nan. All right. Come down Saturday. Apparently the sun's going to be shining until about 4 p.m. So we're going to get in and out before it starts raining. But please do join us. It's going to be incredible. Thank you so much for engaging with Equal Parenting Week. We've got loads coming up. Tomorrow we have a webinar on the mental load. We're going to be discussing that new research. Men are much more likely to believe they're in equal parenting relationships than mothers are. Lots to unpack there, lots to get into. Friday, we have a co-parenting webinar, and Saturday, we have Push for Paternity. We have loads of businesses, Channel 4, Volkswagen, Clifford Chance, doing their own internal activity. Our dream, our aim is to make Equal Parenting Week as big as Black History Month, International Women's Day, Men's Day, a real point in the calendar where everyone, organizations, individuals, businesses, mark and amplify equal parenting, the issues, the solutions, and also celebrating good practice too. So thanks so much, Jane, Richard, Emily, Michael, everyone. Give them a round of applause at home. I'm sure you are. I trust you are giving them a round of applause. You've all been brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate you. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I hope you found this interesting and informative and a great way to spend a lunchtime hour. So thank you so much. Take care. See you all soon.